The Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall. Chapter 5, The Ark of the Covenant. One of the most interesting symbols that has come down to us from the ancients is that of the ark, or the box, that was said to contain the sacred relics. Many people believe that this belongs particularly to the Jewish nation, but this is a great mistake because it has been the birthright of every country to have the ark. All have, like the Jewish people, lost much of their power and glory when they lost the sacred ark. In ancient Chaldea and Phoenicia, the ark was well known. India celebrates it as a lotus, and the ancient Egyptians tell how the moon god Osiris was imprisoned within the ark. In all the mystery religions of the world, individually and cosmically, the ark represents the fountainhead of wisdom. Over it, the Shekinah glory hovers as a column of flames by night and a pillar of smoke by day. Every country has seen and felt its presence when the priest kings and the initiates come out of an old civilization, lost because of crystallization, the sacred ark, and surrounded by those faithful to the truth, carry it into the lands and among other peoples. In every creed and religion, we find crystallization. We find small groups of people separating themselves from their brothers. We find those who, clinging to the old, refuse to advance with the new. And whenever we find this crystallization, we find the spirit of truth carried away to other people and embodied in other doctrines. The ancient ark of the Israelite never had removed from it the staves by which it was carried and moved, until finally it was placed in Solomon's temple. Neither does the spirit fire in man rest until finally it is enthroned in the body place of his solar temple. Ever towards the rising sun, its bearers carry this sacred truth. Nations are born of those who love the truth and are buried when they forget it. The time has come when its silent bearers have taken the sacred ark and Shekinah's glory in the solemn file and have moved across the waters and brought it into the new world. The call is surrounded through the universe, and those who are true to their own higher principles have surrounded the sacred chest. Those who have sworn alliance to their own higher being are following the priests and their sacred burden. And a beautiful mystery temple is being built in this beautiful land of ours, loved and guarded by those who are laboring for humanity. The staves are still in the ark, however, and only when real good can be done by it will it remain. The opportunity is now confronting the Western world. The knowledge of the ancients, the wisdom of the ages, is knocking at the door and seeking those who will follow it. The bearers of the ark have stopped, and they're gathering a nucleus of spiritual souls to carry on their work. And whether or not the word of the Lord will remain with a nation depends upon its own actions. And the actions of a nation are the collective actions of its individuals. If it finds nothing here attuned to itself, if it finds few that will answer to its call, the call of service and brotherhood, then will its priests lift again the staves, and the sacred work will go out into other lands. The life of a country is thus gone. Like the ancient city of the Golden Gate, it will be swallowed up in oblivion. The call is sounding, and those who love the truth and think and care for the light must join that band of servers who have for centuries dedicated themselves to the preservation of truth. Their lives they have given 1,000 times. Their happiness has been second to their duties. They are the keepers of the sacred word, and the law of attraction draws to them all who love and live the truth. A great influx of spiritual light comes to those who live the life and have learned the doctrine, And regardless of clan or country, they have joined the silent file of watchers and workers around the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Every individual, by his daily actions, is expressing more plainly than by words his ideals, his desires, and his attitude towards this great work. People either shuts out or lets in the light. Therefore, every individual has a great duty and a great work has to be done. And to that, the true student must dedicate his life. Then, wherever he may go, whatever he may do, he is being led, and the Shekinah's glory directs his footsteps. Illustrated on the left, we see the rod that budded, the pot of manna, and the tablets of the law. In the brain of man, between the wings of the kneeling cherubim, is the mercy seat, and there man speaks with his God, as the priest of the tabernacle spoke to the Spirit of the Lord, hovering between the wings of the angels. Man is again the ark, and within him are the three principles, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the tablets of law, the pot of manna, and the rod that budded. But as in the case of the ancient Israelites, when they became crystallized, the pot of manna and the rod that budded were removed from the ark, and all that was left were the tablets, or the letters of law. When the individual crystallizes and excludes various sidelights from his mind, he excludes the life force which was flowing to him. In shutting out strangers, he shuts out his own life, and all that he has left are the tablets of law, the material reasons from which the spiritual life is gone. Solomon's temple, or the perfected temple of the human body, the perfected temple of the universe, and the perfected temple of the soul, finally forms the perfect shrine for the living ark. There, at the head of the great cross, it is placed, and there, in man, it becomes permanently fixed. The stabs of polarity upon which it was carried are removed, and it becomes a living thing. And there man, who is the purified priest, arrayed in the robes of his order, the garments of his soul, converses with the Spirit hovering over the mercy seat. This ark within is always present, but man can only reach it after he has passed through the outer court of the tabernacle, after he has passed through all the degrees of initiation, and after he has taken the third degree and become a grand master. Then, and only then, can he enter into the presence of his Lord, and there in the darkened chamber, lighted by the jewels of his own breastplate, he converses with the Most High, the true spiritual essence within himself. We are working toward this, and the time will come when each person for himself will know the mystery of the ark, when the student through purification shall be led through the door of the Holy of Holies, and there be enveloped by the light of truth. This was his birthright, which he sold for a mess of pottage. To this end came he into the world, that he might bear witness to this truth, and through this light all men might be saved. The ark, the great spiritual principle, surrounded by its loving workers, is calling all to follow it. When through materiality and degeneracy a great people are destroyed, or a continent sinks beneath the ocean, then those that are true are called around the ark, and as its faithful servers are led out of the land of darkness into the new world and a promised paradise. All great teachings set forth the same thing. the student will find that it is true, and when he allies himself with the powers of light, and when he becomes a channel for its expression, and when he radiates it from himself to all who need it, then indeed will the light protect him, and he shall become a sun of God. The Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall, Chapter 6, The Holy Grail. The Holy Grail. See in this cup your own body, within which is the lifeblood of the Sun Spirit of the universe. Each day that we live, we perpetuate the Last Supper, and in all that we do, we drink again the blood of Christ, which is the life power of the cosmos. Before starting to take up the study of the Grail legends, it will be well for all who are interested to read those tales that are now listed under the heading of children's fairy tale stories. For example, the story of the good King Arthur and his round table is a cosmic myth, and while there is little doubt that he as a man also lived, the real mystery, as in the story of Christ, is not the literal tale, but the great mystic or occult truth that it concealed under allegory and parable. It is the same with the story of Parsifal, which can never be really understood and appreciated until the student sees in the knight and the latter king of the sacred cup his own spiritual development and the temptations that he must also master if he would become a king of the Grail. In Lohengrin, also the same truth is shown to the world. It is the path of initiation along which each must pass on his road to self-mastery. To every nation and in every tongue, sacred legends have been given to teach man the path that he must follow. The blind Homer of the Greeks, who told the wanderings of Ulysses, gave the same great truths to the world. The skulls of ancient Norway and Sweden and the prophets of the Jews used the same means, and everywhere from the sacred books of the East to the legends of American Indians, we find one great connected truth told to many different people in many ways that were best suited for their own development. Such a truth is the legend of the Round Table, given to King Arthur as a wedding gift. All true students know what wedding that was. Not of the earth, but the wedding of the spiritual and intellectual within the initiate himself. When the spirit and the body are united eternally, each swearing to honor and protect the other. Of such a marriage was the union of Arthur and Guinevere in the legend of the king. Let us first all consider the coming of Arthur the king. We read in the legend of Arthur regarding Merlin the magician, the wise man who it is said had charge of the coming king during his youth. Merlin represents the hand of the elder brothers, who, realizing that a great ego had come into the world, had consecrated themselves to the work of preparing him for his mission. It was under the direction of Merlin, the mastermind, that the anvil and the stone with the sword thrust into it were raised in the square of the city when it became necessary for a new king to be selected. He was also who called all of the brave knights of the country and told them that the one who could draw forth the sword would be the king of all the land. And of all the knights in that land, Arthur, the half-grown boy, was the only one who could release the sword. There is a very wonderful mystery of the soul contained within that divine allegory. Let us read the letters that were engraved upon the sword. Quote, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is right wise king, born of England." End quote. The cube stone is the body. It has been so symbolized for centuries, And today, among the Masons, the ashlar is the symbol of man. Experience is the anvil, and it is upon this anvil that the sword is tempered. The sword is spirit, and he who would be king in the true spiritual sense of the word must first show his divine power by freeing the sword of the spirit from the casings of the lower man and the world. It is the same symbol of that used by Sir Galahad, the guileless knight, the personification of the purified man, who comes without a sword, but who later arms himself with the sword of spirit that he draws from the cube block, which was floating down the river of life past Camelot. Sir Galahad had the strength of 10. His heart was pure, and the knight of today must follow in the same path. If you have read the story of King Arthur, you will remember how he was given the Excalibur, the enchanted sword, and how it came up out of the water held by a hand draped in white. Excalibur represents light and truth, which is the weapon of the true initiate. In England, there still hangs on the courthouse wall the round table of King Arthur. In the very center of the table is a beautiful rose painted in natural colors. This symbol is that of the Rosicrucians, the ancient alchemists, and there is a direct connection between the legend of the British king and the ancient philosophers of fire. Illustrated on the left, the Rosicrucian rose. In this flower, which was painted upon the center of King Arthur's table, we see the soul of man, which through purification and service has blossomed out with all the grandeur of the initiate. Illustrated on the left, the sacred spear. This is the spear of passion that pierces the side of the Christ, the higher principle in man. But when in the hand of the pure of heart, this power can heal the very wound that it caused. Now, let us turn our attention for a moment to the history of the Holy Grail, or the cup from which Christ drank at the Last Supper, and which was said to have caught his blood when he was dying upon the cross. Ancient legends tell us that this cup was made from a sacred stone, which had been the crown jewel of Lucifer, the dynamic energy of the universe. It was said that the green stone had been struck from the crown of Lucifer by the archangel Michael during the famous battle in heaven. After the death of Christ, it is said that Joseph of Arimathea took the sacred cup and the spear of the Passion and carried them into a distant land. He wandered with his sacred relics through Europe and is said to have finally died. And those who came after him, after many centuries of tribulation, carried the sacred relics to Mount Salvart in northern Spain, where they remained until Parsifal finally took the Grail and the spear back to the east, where it is now preserved. It is around this cup and spear that the legends of Parsifal and King Arthur have been written. It is through the study of this fact that we are able to better understand the mystery of the Great White Lodge, of which the Round Table of Arthur and the circular temple of the Knights of the Grail is a symbol. Although we no longer have the cup as a physical symbol, it is not gone from among us. And as in the days of old, the brave knights of the Round Table went out to fight for right, so those knights of today, who belong to the Great White Brotherhood, go out into the world in the name of truth and labor with mankind and seek to right the wrongs of the world. It is said that the knights of Arthur's court always fought for virtue and purity, and so did those who rode out Mount Salvart. The Grail cup is the symbol of the creative force of nature. It is also the symbol of the human race, which is slowly learning the mysteries of creation. Within the cup is the blood of Christ, that force which is transmuting the body into soul, fast or slowly, as we give it greater or lesser opportunities. In the sacred spear, we find symbolism again, the creative force, which in the hands of the klingsor, the evil one, wounds and causes suffering, but which, when held by the pure Parsifal, heals the very wound that it caused. A great lesson is being taught to man through these allegories, but the average person is unwilling to stop and consider them. They do not realize that they themselves are the ones whom the elder brothers of humanity must use in the fight against the forces of evil. They do not realize that the dragons and the ogres of the legends are their own lower natures, which they must overcome. They do not see in the hand-to-hand combat of the knights of the old for a lady's hand, the higher and the lower man fighting for the soul within. The knight of today does not realize that the white armor that he wears is his own purified body, which is proof against all the attacks of vice and of passion. But nevertheless, this is the meaning of the legend. His shield is truth, which is a perfect protection to the inner man. His strong right arm is the knowledge and spiritual power that he has developed within, and the sword that he uses is the spiritual light with which the pure flame of the spirit fire dispels the darkness of ignorance and the demons of lust. The sacred spear and the cup which he serves are the two poles of the creative life force within, the development of which he gains as he daily serves his fellow men. For from the uninitiated, the 12 elder brothers of mankind sitting around the circular table of the universe watch the knights in their battle of life. And the time comes when the student, having finished his work here, is liberated at the foot of the Grail. There the candidate stands robed from head to foot in the armor of spirit and in the pure white of a body that has been cleansed. Then the cloth is lifted from the sacred cup, and he is illuminated by the light which would have killed him had he seen it without the purification. He then takes his place among the knights of the Round Table, and he joins those who give up all and labor for humanity. When in sickness and in suffering, we beg of the great unknown that he send us help, then indeed our knight comes to us, as Lohengrin came to Elsa. When our loved ones pass into the great unknown, there stands the brother of the Grail, the invisible helper, who through days of labor has earned the right to become a member of that great band of servers who gather around the table of the king, and while their bodies are asleep, still labor in their great search for light and truth, and pray for the day when they shall also become kings of the Holy Grail. End of chapter 6.